Whoever believed that Jake Paul was going to win, that was an absolute fairy tale.
Jake Paul versus Anthony Joshua is over. Thank God it's over. What a joke of a fight.
From the minute he got into that ring, to get on the back foot and just start running around, was quite pathetic, honest with you.
There was never a universe where Jake Paul believed he'd actually defeat Anthony Joshua. The sheer nerve of it, though. That deserves recognition for pure boldness. But let me tell you what really went down.
Idiot. There is no reason.
If Anthony Joshua puts 10-ounce gloves on and gets in a boxing ring and Jake Paul is in the other corner, this won't last long. This will last as long as Josh wants it to last.
Jake Paul just got completely demolished by boxing analysts following his pathetic performance against Anthony Joshua. We're talking about the type of destruction that leaves zero wiggle room for damage control or creative storytelling. The influencer boxing dream died hard, with shattered bones, cracked ribs, and the brutal consequences that happen when delusional self-belief crashes into real heavyweight power. This wasn't some competitive fight that could have gone either way. This was education delivered through violence. Anyone who truly knows this sport predicted exactly what would unfold.
Jake Paul is concerned because that's not boxing. He was just trying to survive. And when you try to survive in a fight, then the other guy can't knock you out because you're not looking to.
Let's stop acting like this outcome surprised anyone with working brain cells and basic boxing knowledge. People who pay attention already mapped out this disaster before they even touched gloves. Jake Paul has spent years treating boxing like a theme park, carefully selecting opponents from a very particular menu. Washed-up MMA guys who hadn't competed seriously in forever, ancient former champions decades removed from relevance, even athletes whose punching experience came from basketball rather than actual combat sports. The blueprint was transparent to anyone bothering to look past the social media noise and viral marketing clips. Strategic matchmaking that dodged legitimate threats, endless talk about transforming boxing forever. Sure, it generated clicks and cash, but none of that matters when facing authentic heavyweight talent.
Who's got balls to stand in there with AJ, who had been off, so his chin is refreshed. He's ready to fight.
Joshua walked in carrying over 25 professional victories against legitimate competition, multiple heavyweight championships across various sanctioning bodies, plus an Olympic gold medal from London. Those are the credentials that actually count this business. Jake Paul brought 13 professional fights to the table, but here's what matters most. 0 against current or former heavyweight champions, 0 against anyone ranked by serious heavyweight organizations, 0 that required the elite defensive awareness needed to survive elite competition. The experience difference wasn't just obvious, it was astronomical.
Joshua is trying to find him. As the fight goes longer, all those big actions, the shots, the big overhand rights, all those things were starting to fatigue.
The mismatch was blindingly clear to anyone watching, with educated eyes from the opening moments. Joshua managed distance like someone who'd mastered this craft over a decade of elite competition. He constructed traps through positioning, controlled the tempo of every exchange, watched Paul waste energy chasing opportunities that were never really there. The physical advantages painted part of the picture, significant differences in height, weight, and reach, but the experience chasm explained everything else, and that chasm was breathtaking. Paul spent fight week discussing knockouts and making history, doing interviews about shocking the world. Joshua arrived to handle business like a seasoned professional who'd encountered every type of challenge. The mindset difference was glaring from the first second.
You know, you're gonna get knocked out anyway, dude. Like, I was hoping I could say, you know what, because he earned the respect of boxing fans by going out on his shield. Guy just ran for his life. I just watched Jake Paul run for his life for like 5-6 rounds.
I try to be responsible. I've been in this game 50 years, so I know where not to step, where you could twist an ankle, or worse, you could break a leg.
The opening rounds carried that quiet tension you feel before something explosive happens. Joshua stayed patient, calculated, composed, not hesitant, but like someone who understands exactly what needs to happen and feels no urgency. He wasn't charging forward recklessly or loading up on desperate power shots hoping for miracles. He was gradually shrinking the ring around Paul. Round after round, Jake attempted to project confidence through his movement and posture, but his footwork revealed the real story to anyone who understands what to watch for. Moving backward when he should have planted his feet, resetting too late after exchanges, responding to Joshua's actions instead of creating his own offensive opportunities. This is where heavyweight reality tends to show up, and it shows up violently and immediately. When the finish arrived, it felt completely predictable to anyone who'd been honest about this matchup from day one. It felt unavoidable, like watching disaster approach in slow motion, while being powerless to stop it.
Even while I think a heavyweight has a chance in any fight, a puncher's chance, I don't think Jake Paul has anything for Anthony.
Teddy Atlas was among the first experts people sought out for breakdown analysis, and his assessment matched everything he'd warned about before the fight that nobody wanted to acknowledge. Heavyweight fundamentals show no mercy for errors, ever. In lighter divisions, you might survive mistakes in judgment, timing, or positioning. You could get damaged but potentially recover. At heavyweight, those identical mistakes result in immediate and often permanent consequences.
Honestly, what do you want the guy to do? I mean, this guy ran for his life in a 22 by 22 floor ring. That ring was huge. That ring was huge.
Heavyweight competition punishes errors instantly and brutally. No time exists for recovery from poor decisions. Atlas explained with characteristic directness that when someone lacks elite defensive instincts developed through thousands of rounds, the division itself becomes your enemy, not just your opponent. You're not simply fighting another person wearing gloves, you're battling physics, mass, leverage, timing, and the accumulated punishment that heavyweight shots deliver. Jake Paul had never existed in that environment before this night. Never felt what happens when someone who truly comprehends heavyweight power and technique decides to unleash everything. The way you defeat someone like that isn't through technical wizardry or outboxing. When he's controlling the action, setting traps for counters, then countering your counters before you realize what's happening, that represents boxing intelligence that can't be acquired through a few training camps.
It looked like that was the moment he was going to throw in the towel and say, you know what, I'm done, I'm injured, I'm hurt, I don't want to do that. But hats off to him, he got up and he kept fighting. We get to the 6th round and you can just tell that it's over.
Should you respect him for accepting the challenge? Absolutely. The physical statistics made the discussion even more brutal for Paul's supporters. Analysts highlighted that Joshua carried over 100-pound weight advantage on fight night with complete rehydration calculated, plus a reach advantage exceeding 6 inches, giving him complete control of distance throughout every exchange. This isn't minor trivia that doesn't affect outcomes. This represents total control of every fight aspect. Control over range and when shots can connect, control over exchanges and who absorbs damage, control over when violence erupts and how it develops. These advantages determine entire fights before the opening bell.
In my life, I think my jaw is broken, by the way, so yeah. Let's go! It's definitely broke. But
boxing experts immediately dismantled the puncher's chance argument that Paul's fans kept promoting. At heavyweight, that concept only applies when both fighters possess elite defensive understanding and respect each other's power. When one fighter lacks that comprehension, when one competitor operates at a completely different defensive level, the puncher's chance transforms into a puncher's liability. It becomes the foundation for catastrophe rather than opportunity.
He could take those punches and they can really do no damage to him. It even boosted his confidence more.
Betting odds reflected this understanding long before any action began. Joshua opened as an overwhelming favorite, with numbers suggesting over 85% probability of victory across major sportsbooks. This wasn't disrespect toward Paul or dismissal of his previous achievements. This was mathematics, cold calculations based on quantifiable elements. The markets recognized what the promotion tried to obscure. Experience, size, skill, and track record matter enormously in boxing, especially at heavyweight. Loud confidence doesn't change mathematical probability. Marketing campaigns don't alter physical laws.
You knew that Anthony Joshua was going to eventually land something that hurt Jake Paul. And you know how you know the boxing world wanted it to be brutal? Because Rosendo was sitting here and he goes, I hope he gets knocked out.
Boxing analysts and former professionals formed a long line to dissect what happened after Paul's crushing defeat. What made Paul's situation even worse was the detailed technical analysis from experts who studied every frame he failed to adapt after Joshua's early feints, kept reacting identically even when it wasn't working. He stepped directly into counters rather than creating messy exchanges that could have disrupted Joshua's timing, He responded slowly to combinations and moved straight backward instead of at angles, breaking fundamental defensive rules. Experts agreed that if the same right hand that dropped Francis Ngannou landed flush on Paul, no possible version of this fight ends differently. That wasn't disrespect or trash talk. That was understanding anatomy and physics, knowing what occurs when heavyweight power meets insufficient defense represented for boxing.
Anthony Joshua, who's now 5 inches bigger than you, maybe more, or 4 or 5 inches, and about 100 pounds heavier.
Johnny Nelson, former cruiserweight champion and respected commentator, delivered analysis that resonated because of its precision. He stated that Anthony Joshua never engages in gentle boxing at any level, meaning Joshua lacks an exhibition setting or friendly sparring mindset once the bell sounds. This wasn't promotional hype or manufactured drama. This was technical assessment based on years of studying Joshua's approach. Joshua isn't someone who plays with opponents or takes things easy for entertainment purposes. When he commits to a shot or combination, he commits completely with serious intentions. Nelson stressed that Joshua's methodology has always focused on control, followed by damage, regardless of opponent or situation. He fights identically whether competing for world titles or in comeback situations. Exhibition thinking doesn't exist in Joshua's ring behavior or preparation. If you enter the ring with him wearing 10-ounce gloves in a sanctioned professional contest, you're accepting serious consequences. No other interpretation makes sense.
Punching heavyweight. And Fake Paul's never been in with a heavyweight. Like I said earlier, he lost to Tommy Fury, a cruiserweight. He lost to him. Tommy Fury's not even British level. So you can't chuck Fake Paul in with Anthony Joshua and take it serious.
What made the business aspects didn't soften the criticism, and actually intensified it in some ways. Simon Jordan, businessman and vocal media figure, was particularly harsh in his characterization of the entire event. Jordan labeled the challenge ridiculous, regardless of financial benefits, emphasizing that money doesn't justify ignoring competitive reality or endangering someone's safety. He recognized the commercial achievement and pay-per-view success, but completely separated that from sporting logic and competitive sense. His focus centered on legitimacy and what this fight represented.
Acclaimed, a lot of accolades, world champion heavyweight.
You simply don't jump from amateur level directly to that stratosphere. A 2-time heavyweight champion with Olympic credentials and a decade of elite competition isn't marketing material or content creation opportunity. Treating elite fighters that way is how people suffer permanent damage in contests that should never happen at this level. Jordan's position carried weight because it came from someone who grasps both sports media dynamics and ownership responsibilities. He wasn't bothered by the spectacle or promotional aspects. He was troubled by the mismatch and its implications, concerned about someone getting seriously injured in a fight that never should have been sanctioned at this level.
What it needed to be tonight for this fight and for this fight. It was fun. It was crazy at times with the wrestling and all the grabbing and the clenching, the referee saying the fans didn't pay for this shit.
What made the reaction even more damaging for Paul was watching figures who previously supported crossover boxing and influencer fights begin withdrawing their endorsement. Multiple fighters and commentators who once defended influencer boxing as introducing new audiences to the sport acknowledged that this fight revealed a hard limit, not temporary barriers that training could overcome, but structural ones requiring years of proper development. The recognition was sometimes quiet, but widespread throughout the boxing community. You can market curiosity to casual viewers, you can sell novelty and entertainment, but you cannot bypass boxing's infrastructure, years of amateur foundation and gradual progression, and expect heavyweight results to accommodate you just because you command a massive social media audience. When Joshua connected with serious power and Paul went down without getting up, unable to beat the count due to severe damage. That's what happens when skill levels are separated by this much distance.
He's the only one outside of Conor McGregor that could fight this level of fight at his experience.
The statistics supported everything critics were saying with undeniable evidence. Anthony Joshua began professional boxing following extensive amateur experience, including over 150 amateur contests against elite international competition. That figure carries enormous significance because amateur boxing is where timing, defense, and survival instincts develop through repetition and experience. That's where fighters learn to absorb punishment and continue functioning. Jake Paul entered professional boxing with absolutely zero amateur background, not limited amateur experience, literally none whatsoever. That gap doesn't close through confidence or elite training camps. It closes through years of experience, years of taking shots and learning survival. Joshua accumulated that experience over more than a decade. Paul lacked that foundation entirely. It was precisely what experts predicted would determine the result. Joshua's professional record features multiple world title defenses across different championship reigns against elite heavyweight competition. He's completed 12 rounds at championship pace against world-class opponents, actively trying to hurt him for the entire duration. Paul had never fought beyond 8 rounds at elite pace before this contest, and most of his fights concluded much earlier. That difference isn't theoretical or something that sounds important, but lacks practical impact. 8 rounds versus 12 rounds represent different sports regarding physical and mental requirements, especially at heavyweight, where every shot extracts something from you. The physical and mental pressure escalates dramatically beyond round 8 when exhaustion arrives. Fighters who haven't experienced that deep water typically reveal it quickly when forced into that environment. Someone who doesn't belong there will expose himself when championship rounds arrive and demand the type of performance that highlights every experience gap. From a financial perspective, the fight validated what many industry insiders suspected about the underlying motivations and business structure. Estimated purses ranged between $40 and $50 million per fighter, enormous paydays by any measure. Those figures, reported extensively by multiple sources following the event, confirmed this was a commercial powerhouse designed specifically to attract attention and revenue from both boxing enthusiasts and Paul's social media followers. Nobody questions that from a business standpoint. This was tremendously successful. What the numbers also demonstrated is that commercial success doesn't create competitive balance or sporting legitimacy. Large purses didn't make the matchup closer or more competitive. They just amplified the consequences when reality arrived, ensuring more people witnessed when the inevitable occurred. Financial success doesn't alter what happened in the ring or what it exposed about the enormous gap between influencer boxing and legitimate heavyweight competition.